You who has joined. I'm Olga Tamanova, Media Center Ukraine and Ukrinform. We're beginning our work. This is the 9th year of the war and 175th day since the beginning of the full-scale invasion. I would like to express gratitude to everybody who is telling truth about this war, for the whole world, about the heroic resistance of the Ukrainian people. Today our team has prepared the following events. At 12 p.m. we will be joined here by Mstislav Banik, Head of Electronic Services Development at the Ministry of Digital Transformation, and we will be speaking about the extension of the DIA app opportunities and functioning, about sharing of cars, about mortgages and registration of documents for a child's departure abroad through this app. At 1 p.m. we'll be joined by Serhiy Kuyun, and we will be speaking about the taxes of fuel, about the excise tax, and about the perspective of the fuel market of Ukraine. And just now we are in touch with Fedir Venislavskyi, the People's Deputy of Ukraine, member of Verkhovna Rada of Ukraine on the Committee on National Security, Defense and Intelligence. Hello, Fedir. Hello to you as well. Hi. So we will be speaking about the continuation of the martial law, because recently this law draft was adopted. Could you tell a bit about that? Why was it adopted for such a period? And then we will be speaking about the questions and issues which are discussed very vividly in the society. First and foremost, since the beginning of the full-scale invasion on the 24th of February, the Parliament of Ukraine had another meeting, and during the first day it's adopted the decree of the President about the martial law state and about the overall mobilization for 30 days. Then there was twice continuation of 90 days, and in 90 days, which is over on the 23rd of August this year, according to this plenary week, which took place just this week, the Verkhovna Rada, the Parliament of Ukraine, have considered the decree of the President and the law draft, which was introduced by the President, to extend this mode and the mobilization for 90 days more. It's obvious for everybody now, and for the citizens of Ukraine, and for the local authorities, and for the international experts, that the blitzkrieg, which was planned by Russian Federation and which Russia had as an aim during the first days of the war, was not achieved. We have stood not only through the first weeks and several days, but we also stood through half of the year of this cruel war. And taking into account what situation we have now at the front line from the perspective of the actions of Russian Federation, we understand that the war will go on. So the President took a decision to announce this legal state and to extend it, to prolong it for 90 days more. And Verkhovna Rada, the Parliament, unanimously supported this decision about the continuation of the martial law and mobilization for 90 days more. Here we take into account that Russian Federation is systematically conducting the activities to transfer its economy to the military state, the military way. The enterprises are refocusing to produce the equipment necessary for the war. We need to take that into account as well, and those 90 days which the martial law is extended for foresee even bigger consolidation of the efforts of the law enforcement and all the security and defense sectors and the people of Ukraine to repulse this aggression of Russian Federation against Ukraine, and the more flexible adaptation of the economy and also the agricultural complex to the needs of the armed forces of Ukraine. What about the border crossing? There are lots of discussing in the society about that. We have seen the petition which was published and in fact was considered by the President of Ukraine. So let us speak a bit why there is such a necessity to ban the leaving of the country for those who should not be mobilized. So as for the crossing of the borders by the males who are of the military or conscript age, that is 18 to 60 years old, is really vividly debated in the parliament since the second or the third month of the war, because there are lots of employees in Ukraine who are needed, or the professions which are needed abroad, and in fact, our colleagues, our MPs, are registering or offering to discuss the initiatives for providing the opportunity to live abroad for some categories of the people. The most well-known category of the people which is offered to be left abroad are the Marines who are on their missions or are employed in the international trade ships and who are providing money for Ukraine. This is the main motivation for those who are the fans of liberalization to leave those people abroad. But it's very complicated because among the MPs of Ukraine there is no unity in the understanding of this issue, whether it is worth or it's not worth to liberalize the trips abroad for some categories of the people who are not in the armed forces of Ukraine, who cannot be conscripted, or in the broader sense did not have any military service, don't have any military skills. But still the answer to this question was given to the president, answering the petition which you've just mentioned. The president has mentioned in his address, and it's totally complying with the interests of the state and the constitutional settlement, that all of the citizens of Ukraine are equal. There shouldn't be any preferences or restrictions depending on the professional skills or profession. The state will not and cannot do that, and so the main aim and the main task of the Ukrainian people is to preserve our statehood, our independence and territorial integrity, because we cannot speak about any other values without these ones. So as of today, the acute need on the additional mobilization of men to the armed forces of Ukraine and other sectors of defense and security is not there, but still from time to time there is the mobilization ongoing. I would like to remind you there shouldn't be any additional decisions taken for that. Mobilization since the 24th of February till today, until the next 90 days, is compulsory, and in case of the need, the Center of Manning and Social Protection, the military committees, which used to be military committees, are mobilizing the people who are needed in the sector of security and defense. It is defined by the General Staff of Ukraine, the Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces, and in any moment there can be a need emerging about the additional mobilization or conscription of some categories of the people, including the people who did not have any military service, but have some of the specialties or professions which are needed by our armed forces or the security and defense sector. For instance, those could be doctors, those could be the employees of the communication services, and so on. So the issue about liberalization of the voyages or trips is not still decided. Still, there are the opposite initiatives to make the liability even stricter for the people who are conscripts and who would like to leave the country, which are according to the law cannot leave their place of residence. So far this question is not solved. Whether it is solved soon, well, I'm not that sure, considering that the debatable character of this issue, and as it's very acute. We have status quo, students and other categories of the people who, according to the law, cannot be conscripted or mobilized, or to be more precise, who have the right for the delay on the conscription, have the right to leave the country, having the proper documents. Other categories of people need to stay in Ukraine if there is no legal reason to cross the state border. We have seen lots of discussions about criminalization of the events when the male person left abroad after the full-scale invasion, left illegally. What about the comeback of this person? Do we have any understanding among the MPs which liability will such people bear? Well, in fact, as of today, there is criminal responsibility and liability for the person who is trying to get rid of the conscription, and also there is the criminal responsibility for the illegal crossing of the state border. So the people who have crossed the border violating the rules can be taken to administrative and criminal liability. The issues about this restrictions and also aggravating of this responsibility are debated in the parliament. There are several law drafts which are registered about that, about the criminal responsibility and liability in case if the person being abroad has illegally crossed the state border, or even if legally after the end of the term when the person had to come back but did not come back, it can also be considered to be a perpetration. There can be such legislative initiatives, but as of now they are being discussed, so we cannot speak about any final conclusions which can be supported among all of the MPs. One more question, which is discussed a lot in the society, is the military conscription of the women. We know that the women of some of the professions have to be registered since the beginning of October. Can we speak about that a bit, about the military enlistment of women, how it will take place? Let us speak about that. Which professions of the women, maybe according to their diploma or according to their work experience, how it will all take place, and this process, how it will be settled? Well, the military enlistment for the women is not new for Ukraine. And during the Soviet times and during the independence of Ukraine, the women of certain professions which got professional education according to the certain specialization, not only the people who are working according to a different specialization, but who have a document which confirms the level of their qualification, should be at the military registration. For instance, my mother, who was working as a nurse, she always had the military ticket, and as for now, she is in Ukraine. So the women of medical professions are registered as military, mostly. But as for the extension of the list of the specialization and professions which can be substitutions for the military specializations for the needed of the armed forces and other security and defense sector needs, which are defined by the General Staff and Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces. As for even before the full-scale aggression, which started on the 24th of February, the Commander-in-Chief issued a decree about the expansion of the list of military or other professions or specializations which can be needed for the security and defense sector, according to which the women should have been bound to military service. I'm emphasizing it was last year, and this year in February this issue was becoming even more relevant. Now we are speaking not about the certain logical finalization of this procedure. The list has been expanded. There have been certain adjustments introduced by the General Staff of the Armed Forces. As of today, those are the women who have the military specializations which can be needed by the armed forces. Those are the workers of the medical sphere, the employees of the food sphere, the technologists of the food cooking for the needs of the armed forces. Those could be the women who have the military registered professions connected with communications, means the women who can have professions connected with the informational technologies, with the chemical products and other components and other professions which can be needed for the armed forces of Ukraine. According to the official explanation of the Ministry of Defense and the General Staff, these women have to be registered and bound to military registration till the 1st of October, but if they don't, there won't be any serious consequences, though there can be certain administrative liability for that. And in the future, I think that in case of the avoiding of the military registration, those sanctions and forced sanctions can be used against such people who are systematically trying to avoid these law drafts. Thank you. We've got the questions in the studio. No, there are no questions. You answered all the questions. I thank you that you found time and were joining us. I'm reminding you we had Fedir Venislavskyi, the MP, the member of the Verkhovna Rada Committee on National Security, Defense and Intelligence. And dear colleagues, I remind you our next briefing is at 12 p.m., so stay with us.